Hello everyone and welcome to this build guide. It took a while to make it because this build may be my strongest build ever. As you know, I usually play just some meme builds and off-meta builds, or just in general trying something new, trying something different, and I feel like I finally hit the jackpot. Jackpot of good meme build. I even tried Uber Elder on this build, and I never even attempted Uber Elder before. And the first fight I did was pretty decent, but I still failed, and then tried 3 more times, still failed. But with more practice, I feel like I should be able to do Uber Elder on this build. The damage, it's not the highest one, but it is continuous damage. So while on other builds you are running around not doing any damage, on this build you are running around still doing some damage. It is decently fast, and the clear speed could be fast if you are used to playing fast. I'm not used to playing fast, so I can't really do it fast, but it has enough attack speed and movement speed to move fast, and of course enough damage to kill enemies fast. The funny thing is, the faster you move, the faster you use Cold Snap, the more damage you do, which allows you to go even faster. So maybe let's talk about how this build functions. So the Cold Snap does hit damage and then leaves a chill ground which deals cold damage over time. And the AoE of the chill ground slowly spreads. And I started this build after they fixed Cold Snap. Previously Cold Snap damage over time could stack. Now it does not stack, but we also buffed Cold Snap damage at level 20 by 25%. So I repeat, Cold Snap did not get nerfed, it got buffed. And then for all the damage, I'm basically relying on Indigon Helmet. Indigon Helmet only drops from Uber Elder, and it is currently pretty cheap, around 30-40 chaos. So whenever you consume mana, Indigon Helmet increases the spell damage, and it increases the mana cost of spells, which makes you consume even more mana, which makes you increase spell damage even more. And in the end, I'm getting thousands of increased spell damage. I can't tell exactly how much spell damage I'm gaining, but my DPS increases by like 8 to 10 times. And a good thing is that Cold Snap snapshots the damage that you have. Now this may be a bit confusing, but bear with me. This build relies on damage over time rather than on hit damage. So I don't really need to worry about maintaining my frenzy charges to bypass the cooldown of Cold Snap. And that also allows me to power up my Cold Snap damage over time through the Indigon and maintain that damage during all the Cold Snap duration. Even if I stop casting spells and I start losing the damage from Indigon Helmet, the existing Cold Snap damage over time will still deal full damage until its duration runs out. And that's what I mean by snapshotting the damage. And this works extremely well because I don't have to keep spamming my spells to maintain that damage. And to power up my Indigon, well, damage from Indigon, I am using Curse. Curse with Arcane Surge, faster casting, or increased duration, and that allows me to consume my mana very fast and use it when I need to. Because generally while mapping I don't even need to use that curse that much. I just use it at the start to power it up and then continuously just shield charge or whirling blade through and keep using Cold Snap, and Cold Snap mana cost itself will power up Cold Snap itself. And to increase my mana cost I am using 2 Fevered Mind Jewels, and this is a Trickster, so I get plenty of attack and cast speed for even faster mana consumption, and also my movement skills cost no mana, so I can also spam my movement skills to recover my mana, because I have 20% chance to recover 10% of my mana when I use a skill, and I have Watcher's Eye which gives another 14% chance to recover 10% of my mana when I use a skill, while affected by clarity of course. So basically every third skill I cast will recover 10% of my mana. I also do have a lot of mana, because when I fully power up my Indigon, casting Curse or Cold Snap costs like 2000 mana per cast. So above anything else, you need as much mana as possible to power up even more. And obviously this is mind over matter, so I have about 7,500 effective life. And Indigon Helmet is the only required item. All the other items are up to you. So maybe I'm gonna talk about my items now. Indigon Helmet, obviously, it is socketed with Frostbite, linked with increased duration, faster casting, and Arcane Surge. It doesn't have to be socketed inside the Indigon Helmet, obviously, but this is my main setup to power up the Cold Snap damage. Next, my body armor. I actually accidentally 6-linked this one after getting it from the temple, and it fits this build. And it doesn't have to be anything special, just a lot of life, some resistances, and it is socketed with my level 20 quality 20 normal Cold Snap, not Val version. I didn't use Val version. Then linked with Efficacy, Elemental Focus, Control Destruction, Concentrated Effect, and Swift Affliction. I do swap Concentrated Effect for increased AoE when I'm mapping, but I also sometimes do use Concentrated Effect in the Incursions. And no, level 4 Empower would not give me more damage. I was, however, using level 3 Empower instead of increased AoE, so I didn't have to swap my gems. But in the end I wanted more damage, so I did have to recover my body armor. Then my weapon, I wanted increased attack, increased cast speed, and some spell damage on the weapon. Increased attack and cast speed is basically just to improve the fluidity of the build. Attack speed increases the shield charge or willing blade speed, while cast speed is sort of needed to help the build feel less clunky. And the damage on the weapon really doesn't matter. When you are getting thousands of spell damage, what does it matter if you have 50 spell damage on the weapon, or you have 20 or 100 spell damage? So the weapon choice is pretty flexible, and I would prefer to use Leap Slam, but I couldn't get the scepter with good mods. The weapon also has efficacy, and I am socketing Frost Bomb while Lightning Trap and increased duration, and efficacy also increases the skill effect duration as well. And the Frost Bomb lowers enemy resistance, so it does work for damage over time things. Unfortunately, my weapon also has Spell Echo, so I am casting Frost Bomb twice. Next, my shield. I wanted some life and also mana and life recovery on block. Combined with Rumi's Concoction Flask, it's supposed to increase my survivability, but I'm not really sure. Previously, I was using Unyielding Flame Shield. It gives some life, some resistances, attack and cast speed, which can be useful, and also triggers the Meteor. And the Meteor is powered by Indigon, so it can scale to pretty ridiculous values. And very often you will just see rare enemies just get one-shotted by the Meteor. But it does have 3-second cooldown, and it's not really that great against bigger bosses, because after all, this is fire damage from the Meteor, and I'm using Frostbomb and Frostbite, so it's not really synergized very well. And inside the shield I have level 8 Blade Vortex linked with cast when damage taken level 1 and Immortal Call level 3. To explain why I'm using Blade Vortex, I need to show my gloves. So these are shaped gloves with level 20 blind support gem, and also has 9% global chance to blind enemies on hit. So when I start taking damage, I trigger multiple Blade Vortex, which has pretty high hit rate, which basically blinds enemies around me, and that is one defensive layer. And inside my gloves I do have Orb of Storms linked with faster casting, increased critical strike support, and Culling Strike. And also it is supported by level 20 blind support gem inside the gloves. So it is like a pseudo 5-link, and my Orb of Storms helps me blind enemies even more, and also does the Culling Strike. And also triggers Elemental Overload. Next, my boots are also pseudo 5-linked, well pseudo 6-link. And I am using these boots for my shield charge, so I don't have to use Fortify support gem myself. And the links inside boots are shield charge linked with faster attacks. And also I have Clarity and Portal. And you can easily use Willing Blade instead of shield charge. Or if you had a scepter, you could use Leap Slam. Next, my belt. I do have belt with maximum increased mana recovery rate. This mod is a bit confusing because it does not show in the tooltip to increase your mana regeneration, but it does increase your mana regen basically. The other mods on belts don't really matter that much. You don't really need cooldown and recovery speed. I just got lucky crafting it, but basically just get life and resistances. Next, for the amulet, Azira's Foible. I don't think that there is anything better than this one. Now, rings are pretty cheap. You basically just want to get life, mana, and mana regen, and just get some resistances whichever you need. Now for the flasks, there aren't that many useful flasks for this build. They are mostly gonna be used for defenses. Like Sulfur Flask is probably the only flask for the damage, and the rest are just for defenses, and of course 2 life flasks, maybe even 3. I did use 3 life flasks during the Uber Elder fight. So pick your own drinks. I was just using Rumi's Concoction for the block. I also tried using Writhing Jar because Trickster's Patient Reaper gives 70% increased recovery rate of life, mana, and energy shield if you have killed an enemy affected by the damage over time recently. So if those worms die from your Cold Snap's damage over time and not initial hit, then you will get a massive boost to your mana and life regen. Well, it doesn't have to die from the damage over time, but it has to be affected by damage over time. And in scary situations it can be tricky to use it properly. So I'm not sure if it is really that great. Next, the passive skill tree. As I said, Trickster, first I went for the Patient Reaper, then Prolonged Pain, and only then got Weave the Arcane. And then finally from the Uber Lab I got Swift Killer, but Swift Killer doesn't really help all that much against bigger bosses, so maybe even using a flask that gives all the charges would be pretty good. Anyway, the rest of the passive skill tree, so I did refund these nodes later on. I did go through here first, grab life and mana much later on, then travel left to the AoE to which life nodes, then picked Elemental Overload, some damage, some resistances, more life, and then travel down to the Big Sun life wheel. And I only picked Elemental Equilibrium much later in the game, basically before the Shaper fight. And Elemental Equilibrium without Orb of Storms would be bad, but Orb of Storms basically override the Elemental Equilibrium and your Cold Snap damage over time does even more damage. Just make sure your weapon or your other items do not give any cold damage to spells. Then I do have Healthy Mind in here, which converts these life nodes into mana nodes and also doubles their value. Also I do have Tempered Spirit in here, which in this case gives me flat 90 mana. There is an upgraded version to this jewel which also gives movement speed, but I don't find it necessary. Then like I said, I got one Fevered Mind in here, another one in here, my Watcher's Eye in here, and another jewel in here with Onslaught on Kill, but all you need is basically mana and life, and if you need some other stats. Oh, and one more jewel in here, again with life and mana, and I did try to get chance to hinder enemies on a hit with spells. Again, damage on jewel basically does nothing because you are getting thousands of spell damage anyway. As for the bandits, I did took Alira for a bit more flat mana regen and also resistances. I guess I should have done it at the start, but here's my general process dealing with the bosses. Usually I just cast Frostbite until I consume all of my mana, then quickly rush into the boss room, cast Cold Snap, cast Orb of Storms, cast Frostbomb, and that's all. The boss usually dies in one Cold Snap. But if the boss is still alive, I can also cast Val Lightning Trap, which has another big damage multiplier. Enemies take 16% increased damage, which is a big damage multiplier. If it is a longer fight, I usually just shield charge around, keep using Frostbite to power up again, and then use Cold Snap again, and then continue shield charging again. Also don't forget to use Orb of Storms every time you use Cold Snap. As for general mapping, the process is pretty simple. Just power up Indigon at the start of the map and then continue going. Keep using Cold Snap and you don't even need to continuously use Frostbite. Just use it to trigger Arcane Surge. Also drop Orb of Storms once in a while to trigger Elemental Overload, and the mana cost on the Cold Snap itself should power up itself. And that is pretty much all. I am very satisfied with this build, and I guess the only problem with this build is stuns. For the most part I was using Soul of Solaris Pantheon power, which is fully upgraded, but I guess Soul of the Brine King is still pretty good because it prevents you from being chain stunned. Oh, and lastly, if you could get a +2 body armor with level 21 Cold Snap, damage would increase by another 30%. So this build definitely has enough damage for Uber Elder. As for the next build, I am still not sure. I'm building Dark Pact Poison Trapper, but the poison damage is really terrible, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue doing that build. I guess I will find out tomorrow. As always, you can catch me every day live on Twitch, starting at around 9 AM London time zone, and I stream for around 6 to 8 hours. So I thank you for watching and see you soon.